Hey guys, today I'm going to be showing you how to build the one-handed controller that you see in a lot of our videos. This is the one-handed controller that I use. Quick disclaimer, I do have the use of both of my hands, so I will be using two hands to build this controller today. But we will share a tutorial on how to build the Proteus controller with one hand as well. So we're going to start by opening up the box and grabbing our analog cubes. So you can build either a left or right-handed controller, it's up to you. You kind of just need to decide which analog cube you want at the top and which you want at the bottom. If you're used to using your left hand, I'd recommend putting the left analog cube at the top, and if you want to use the right hand, use the right analog cube at the top. It's a little bit easier to put the right analog cube at the top because that's for aiming, but again, it kind of just depends on what you want to do. I'm left-handed, so I will put the left analog cube at the top for this tutorial, but you can just swap it around depending on what you want. I like to start with the analog cube that I'm going to have at the bottom, which for me is the right analog cube. So I'm going to put the right analog cube upside down, and then I'm going to grab my half cube. The next thing you want to consider is which direction you want this male face to face. So I don't like it facing into my hand, so I face it the opposite direction. And then we will have to remap the analog stick later, but we'll get to that at the end of the video. Then you just pop the half cube on top so that the faces are flat at the front. Then you get any power cube. So this will be the power of our controller. Lock that into place. Don't forget to lock all your modules. So you can see this kind of shape forming here of your controller. If you want, you could use a mini analog cube here. I don't like to do this because you don't have enough buttons, but it's up to you. If you're playing a simple game, that would work really well. You have smaller hands. Then I'll grab my left analog cube, pop it at the top, and that's generally the shape of my controller. So it's actually pretty simple once you put it all together. And now I will put the buttons on. So I'm going to start with our triggers. So this is the left trigger. I usually put this at the top. And then I grab the right trigger and I put that at the bottom. Sometimes when I get into the game, I actually change this around and sometimes even put it upside down. It's a bit more comfortable. It really depends on the game and it depends totally on you. So build it however you want. This is just kind of a guideline to get you started. Then I'll grab my ABXY. Sometimes I put this upside down because like in my head, I know that B is on the right and X on the left. If I put them the other way around, then I get confused. Again, totally up to you. Make it how it works for you. Trial and error is a little bit a part of this experience. Makes it more fun. Then I'll get my two 1 buttons, and these are kind of the hack of this controller because you can actually press these buttons really easily. I kind of just squeeze the controller and push the palm of my hand against it, and then I kind of get access to 2 extra buttons without having to use extra fingers. It depends on the game. I usually leave one as A for jumping, and then if there's another important button in the game, then I'll use that. Then I'll just put my D-pad here. It's pretty easy to access. I don't really use the D-pad much. Again, if there's a game where I use the D-pad more, I might put it somewhere else. And then I'll put my Xbox button on the side. And this is my controller. So these are all the buttons. This is the general layout with the analog stick at the bottom. And next I'll show you how to remap the analog stick. So I have 2 windows here. I have the Proteus controller app and I also have it connected to the Xbox. I've plugged my Proteus controller in. And now I'm going to connect it to the app. So just make sure you have a charger and that it's plugged in. Once you get into the app, click the button Remapping menu and then click Analog Sticks. And then move the analog stick you want to remap. So I pushed the analog stick against a table or my leg. So what I'm trying to do here is imagine I was moving forward and push the analog stick that direction and then set that as my forward. One of the tricks to do is to go into the Xbox accessories app here. And then click that little test tube and you can actually see what your controller is doing. So right now I'm moving forward, but it's actually going right. So I just want to update that direction. And now when I move forward, it's moving forward in the Xbox. Then when I check my left and my right, they're inverted. So I'm going to invert the horizontal axis and update that. So then on the Xbox, I can actually see that when I intend to move forward, I move forward, and when I intend to move left or right, I actually move left or right. Then that's all you need to do, so you can disconnect from the app and the controller will remember your remapping. So now I'll show you what it looks like when I actually play a game. Minecraft is one of the games I like to try when I build a new controller because it has pretty much every button, but it's not too stressful. So usually when I get into a game, I actually change things around a little bit, move the triggers around. Depends on the game. Some games use more buttons than others. Some games use triggers more than they use the ABXY. Some games are the complete opposite. Sometimes you want to remap your buttons so you don't have to change the controller for each game. It's kind of up to you. This is where I got confused with my menus being upside down. So I think I changed that again later. But I wanted to show you the kind of real experience of getting into a new game and figuring out the best way to set up your controller. After a couple of minutes of messing around, I decided I wanted the left trigger at the top, then the right trigger down from that, and then the ABXY down from that. Because I do have, and you can see here me jumping, I do have really easy access to A with the one button. So I actually didn't really need the ABXY that much, only really needed it in the menus. So I felt like it was easier to just put it at the back of the controller and you'd need the trigger like all the time in Minecraft. So essentially that's why I set the controller up a little bit differently by the end. But I wanted to show you that because it is part of using the controller, especially when you first get it and especially when you're trying a new game. It did take me a little while to get used to the analog stick at the bottom, and if I hand this controller over to someone who's never used it before, they won't know how to get their head around it. So don't worry if you're a bit stuck with this controller. It's a bit tricky, but I do think, for me, of course, my opinion is that it's a pretty good one-handed controller. And we will have a new tutorial soon with different one-handed configurations. So if this one doesn't work for you, don't worry. There's more controllers out there.